This is West Africa Weekly, a live series brought to you by Riglinks and Arvy Core 9, where we talk about oil and gas news, projects, and developments that you can sink your teeth into. Here are your hosts, Greg and Arvy.
Arvy.
Hey, Greg.
Good morning, afternoon. How are you?
Yeah, pretty good, thank you. Pretty good. No complaints.
Fabulous. Where are you at in the world today?
Right, so I'm still in West Africa. I'm still in Nigeria, and it's absolutely baking hot here. You have no idea how hot it is. Unbelievable.
It's so hot the screen's melting.
yeah, something like that. That's a good way of putting it, yeah.
Morning, everyone. Afternoon. Welcome to West Africa Weekly. This is where Arvy and I go over some projects in West Africa and some developments and some news and some. Hopefully she can get some air conditioner. You got a fan blowing on you, Arvy? Get started. Share screen, maybe. Okay, here we go. All right, for our oil prices, looks like we've getting back into a tight market there. The WTI 56.02 and the Brent is at $58.72. So Arvy, we're still in line for the $65 by July, you think?
I don't know. I'm still hopeful. I'm optimistic, but I'm trying to be anyway. Yeah, I think I'm still going to stick to my guns on that one. Yeah, thank you.
We're going to have to agree. I was going through some stuff last night, getting ready for today with you and with Ryan. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. Good night. Welcome from Indonesia, Brazil, Fort Worth. Welcome to the show. And I was looking back across some of the things we talked about. I guess it was maybe 2-3 shows back, and everything seems to be kind of falling in line like we talked about. So
yeah,
be interesting to see the next month or so.
Interesting times ahead, Greg. Things are happening.
I agree. So today we already talked about the oil price, but we'll talk about Sonatrach again. Some more info about Nigeria for their methanol plant and some other stuff there going on. Cameroon with Victoria and Senegal gets GE to do some work with their gas plants. So we'll get started here with Sonatrach. So Arvy, we talked about Algeria Sonatrach. I guess it was last week, and the $40 billion they plan on investing over the next 5 years. But last Friday they made this announcement with the new MOUs with Occidental, Eni, and Total. Mm-hmm. And one of the things it kind of falls in line exactly like we talked about last week, the $40 billion plan, but also the memorandum of understanding they signed on the 31st is aiming to consolidate their relations and their historic partnership and the perimeter contract located in blocks 404, 208 and the Birken Basin. So it looks like they're trying to build a larger stage to work off of. Like you talked about last week, it looks like they're ready to kind of get on a bigger stage. So.
Agreed. And I think what's really interesting here, Greg, is the fact that maybe it's a sign of the times we're in and this COVID issue. But look at the kind of partners that are coming together as well. These are, super majors. So I think that Sonatrach perhaps have been very strategic as to who they've taken as partners as well. But to have two very strong, not that Sonatrach is not a key player, but to have entities like Eni and Total, I think that's a really big gameplay as well. And I think it's about dominating the industry as well, because Total have done incredibly well. We were speaking about this a couple of weeks back. I was just astounded as to the kind of blocks and the kind of activity that Total are currently conducting. But I'm very, as I said before, for me, it's always optimism when companies like this come together and start negotiating and putting pen to paper.
Yeah, it seems like you're right. It is a sign of the times. I think it, as well as I think it's necessity. For some of the smaller countries that had budget outlook over the next 4 or 5 years, knew that they needed to get in there early before some of the IOCs started downgrading in certain areas and moving out of certain countries and things like that. So they need to keep the attraction going. They need to keep something on the table for the bigger players. So.
Yeah.
You're right, James. More vaccines, higher oil price. Yeah. but yeah, it's I think when we talk about Total and kind of the group of people here, Eni, Sonatrach, Total seem to be really kind of putting their money where their mouth is these days, and it's kind of like, well, they're doing a lot of investment into green energy, but they're also continuously developing and exploring for oil and gas on this side too. So it's not like they're a completely different animal than BP is right now.
Yeah.
Absolutely, completely different animal. And from the two, I think longevity. I think Total will probably position themselves a lot better down the road than our friends at BP have. So we'll see.
Yeah.
I'm sure you agree.
Yeah, I do. I do. But again, I'm really, because of the kind of volume of funding, and 40 billion is a hell of a lot of money.
It is.
I guess I'm just going to watch this one very closely, even though it's over a 5-year period. But I'll be interested to see how this actually plays out for Sonatrach.
I mean, with Eni and Total involved, it won't. They'll be kicking that off pretty quick. That's for sure.
Definitely.
So next we'll move on here to Nigeria and their first methanol processing plant, which is a huge thing for these guys. So, ladies.
Well, the question is that, it's about experience, talent, and overall oversight.
Exactly.
Your question to me, I guess, is, Arvy, do you think this is a go for Nigeria? And, I've been coming and going to the region over a period of about 5 years. And yesterday I was over in Port Harcourt. And just for the sake of reference, I've got to say, nobody's actually told me to say this, or there's no paid sponsorship here. But
no.
You thought somebody had paid me off.
I said somebody's paying Arvy to be on.
Somebody's paying Arvy to say all this. No, absolutely not. It's just a matter of my own opinion and my operational kind of stuff that I take on board while I'm out here. But look, I'm really quite impressed with the local technical competencies on the ground. And I spent some time with the technical folks yesterday on the ground in Port Harcourt. And I just feel like Nigeria is, because it's one of Africa's largest producers of crude, and now with the LNG, their methanol processing plant is going to probably go the same way as well. They've got the technical competencies in country, and, and they've also got some very good financing structures as well. So whether they'll bring in partners or, most probably will on the technical side of things, but, it's something that can be really well executed, I believe.
I think the experience, go back to that one thing we talked about, the experience, the talent, and the oversight. I think they've always had talent, So it's the experience now, So for me, building on the talent they have in country and expanding on that, and then once you start talking about new processes and kind of new things for the industry coming in, then you need some kind of oversight to basically monitor that process to see how efficiently that process is going. And so I guess I was more concerned about the oversight. They'll get it there, they'll get it up, and they'll get it running. But, over how long of a period do you think that that they will have here before they will be completely standalone, where they don't need any other oversight with it? That was my largest concern.
I think, like with any major project like this, I mean, we're looking at completion at 2024. So, I mean, that's all very much depends on the schedule of delivery and what the key takeaway deliverables are. I mean, you could have, what it's like working.
We could be talking about the 2026, 2027 later down the road. So, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So we can put a date to paper, but who actually knows? It's one of those things where we're hoping that it won't be too long after that date, but who knows?
Right. All right. Other news in Nigeria, looks like ExxonMobil's managing director has been invited to come to court. So, yeah, I mean, they say, so I ran across this one and was, we obviously did some work on it and put it out there as well. But the text in some of it was a bit conflicting. So, but looks like they've issued an arrest warrant for the managing director of ExxonMobil's group there, Richard Lang. But later on, well, just to kind of go back a little bit, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, or EFCC, said they have sent 3 invitations to appear before investigators. Allegedly, it is over some procurement fraud involving more than $213 million in one of the pipeline projects there. But they said the investigation was into ExxonMobil and not Lang personally, further into the text. So, but they've issued an arrest warrant for him, but it's not about him. It's about Exxon. So I guess, Arvy, one of the things that you always have to kind of keep in the back of your mind is, well, how hard can Nigeria make this on ExxonMobil, to be honest?
Look, and something was really and I know what you're going to say, so we're going to have to put this out there. We're not criminal investigators, but I like the story. I like the way the story's going. I think, look, if I'm quite honest with you, and it's really strange, I've not heard anything. I've been here for a couple of weeks, 2 weeks now. I've not actually heard anything specifically about ExxonMobil. The only thing I have heard is about Shell and their ongoing kind of legal dispute for the Delta region. I've not really heard much about ExxonMobil and the director's arrest warrant. But any international company operating overseas, I'm sure they've got the best legal team and the best arbitration lawyers together to discuss this, because it's, there surely would be a reason why they've issued an arrest warrant. I've not really come across this in my oil and gas career anyway, that you openly, a government would openly kind of hand out an arrest for a managing director, a CEO of an oil company. It's unheard of in my career anyway. So this is the first time I'm actually hearing this kind of story, and it's quite alarming, really.
It's I was chatting back and forth with Grant Pierce on LinkedIn, of course, with some comments actually on this post, and I think it has to go back with kind of $213 million doesn't sound like a whole lot. And if it was an older project and it's been kind of sitting on the back burner, and newer projects kind of have not come to fruition yet, that means the older stuff that's still sitting on the table is going to move to the front. And so this is probably something that has been from a while back, that's already been had the hair discussed off of it, and they want to move forward with some kind of agreement there. And they just hadn't gotten to the point where I don't think $213 million is enough for them to, to stop all of the work that's going on. I don't think the money is substantial enough, is what I mean.
Mm.
But I bet it, I still bet that it was an older issue that just is just reappearing. So
yeah, probably.
When times are tight, the pinch comes on, and the older problems start coming back up.
You're absolutely correct about that. Yeah,
they never go away. There's always a list of something in the background.
That's right.
Bullet
Greg,
points or something.
Greg,
so.
I guess it's a good time to say, Greg, what did you do 10, 15 years ago? Do we need
Yeah, I mean, quite honestly, I was, still drilling on the rig 15 years ago. So I think the lesson, or kind of like not the lesson, but the idea here, the footnote or the takeaway for this one is that it's easier to deal with your dispute as soon as possible and not let it sit and continuously go and go and go. With prices and, especially take, for example, if Exxon Mobil decided to sell off whatever project they had in Nigeria and move completely out of Nigeria, the person that they would be selling the project off to would inherit this $213 million problem.
Agreed.
So, yeah.
And it's also, I know we talk about it from an opinion, and we look at it and we say, look, ExxonMobil's contractual responsibilities, and if they were to leave Nigeria, but it would end up being a bigger divorce, because really
it would be. I agree.
You've got to think about all the contractors, all the subcontractors, all the continuation of work that's gone on as well. So it's not just about ExxonMobil; it becomes, an issue for the whole pyramid of companies involved. So I think you've got to be very careful with how they get on here. Yeah,
I agree. I think the idea of announcing that you put an arrest warrant out there for the managing director of ExxonMobil Nigeria, I think I'm not saying it was. I'm not saying it was for show, but I'm saying that you need to be careful with what you're doing for sure. I agree.
Exactly. Yeah. Agreed.
The next thing we'll talk about here is Cameroon. We haven't talked much about Cameroon since we started up West Africa Weekly. So, but do you have much experience in Cameroon, Arvy?
To be honest with you, Greg, I have absolutely no experience of Cameroon whatsoever.
I guess we'll both get some experience.
Inexperienced in Cameroon, correct? Yeah.
So this one here was about Victoria Oil and Gas. They received an extension to the Matanda license and have started the well planning process for shallow well to target one of the many tertiary prospects, most of which are within a few kilometers of existing infrastructure. So they're doing a lot like everybody else is. They're branching out around original infrastructure and trying to find the best value they can as close to the original locations as possible. So they're also in discussion with new customers in the Dala area for further thermal and power projects representing significant energy demand requirements. So one of the reasons I wanted to bring this up for everybody that it's like, what are we talking about this for, is just like last show and the shows before, we want to talk about new developments and new projects. And so that's any new projects, not just the majors. We want to talk about the smaller projects, because the smaller projects and the smaller companies can impact the smaller countries the same as large, companies in large countries too. They bring a lot of value. They bring a lot of, organization to smaller countries, as well as a lot of work for local personnel. So it's really important that you put whenever Arvy and I are discussing these things, we try to highlight where the larger impacts are going to be in kind of the newer regions that people are working in and talking about. I mean, take for example the next one we'll talk about. I mean, the Senegal power plant. That's a huge one as well. That's a huge one. Same as the methanol processing plant. I mean, these are things that we would have never been talking about 20 years ago. We just never would have been talking about it. There wasn't the infrastructure. There wasn't the production and ore operators in place to be able to put these kind of resources together.
I'm gonna what I'm gonna do is when I was in Houston a couple of years back. There was a Houston Cameroonian kind of solar power company that were talking. They were actually talking to some development partners in Houston about going into Cameroon. And they sent me a very nice, very pretty brochure, but it was more on the solar paneling and the renewable energy sector. So I'm not really traced up too much about the oil and gas sector for Cameroon, but I think I'm going to do this because I'm keen to understand their framework as well and what kind of framework agreement they're going to be looking at. So I think maybe for next week we can have a further discussion about that.
Absolutely. I think Victoria and any smaller IOC or any smaller NOCs or any anybody out there that's doing any kind of newer development or newer exploration gets a pat on the back from me. Not that the pat on the back is very big or very much. It's not costly. It's free. But at the end of the day, what I want to say is that when everybody else is pulling out, you're still in doing exploration. So touche to you. The next one, as we just kind of briefly touched on, was GE to power Senegal's largest power plant. So it looks like, Arvy, they've been awarded contract. GE has been awarded a contract to supply gas power generation to Senegal's largest power plant. So that's pretty major. What do you think about that one?
Yeah, I do think that's pretty major, and it's funny that we're talking about GE and their power plant contracts. Yesterday, I was at the Port Harcourt refinery, and I was actually doing some inspection on the turbine farm, also supplied by GE. And when you look at GE's model, they're very technically. They're not just technically sound; they also have a very good commercial kind of sector as well. And when I was discussing some of the contracts specific with them, they have a very good mindset of kind of oil and gas operations. They're not just a lot of people. Well, I was especially looking at GE. Oh, they're just a technical partner and that's it. They're actually not. Their model is very complex.
They've certainly had a long enough time to get that model perfected. That's
sure. Exactly. They've had a good couple of years, haven't they?
For sure.
But for me, I always look at a company and I look at the representatives and the technical people that I engage with, and that really sums up, I think, where the company's going to go. And the guys I spoke with yesterday, just very kind of not just knowledgeable in their sector, but tend to operate more like operators and the BPs and the Shells of the world, which is interesting.
It is, and I think GE, like a lot of other oil and gas companies out there, once upon a time, I think they may have spread themselves too thin, and bought themselves into maybe too many areas at one time.
Yeah.
You can only do so much with the talent that you have. So, when you buy up multiple different entities and try to manage all those different entities. Take for example, like some of the station keeping things and some of the subsea related things. I mean, you're talking GE from a power handling perspective. I mean, they're involved in everything, not just. They are massive, and
they're huge.
When you talk about GE, you talk about everything from the coffee pot that makes your coffee in the mornings all the way to pumping gas into your homes. So it's just powering things at home for you. So it's just the scope of what they do is so broad that when you're dealing with each one of those different kind of divisions within inside of GE, it can become frustrating to try to make any progress because, as you said, they have a very robust system in place, and when you start looking at some of their terms and conditions and things that GE has in place, they do not budge. They do not care. They do not care if you buy a single part from them. They do not care anything. They do not change anything on their terms and conditions. There is no bartering, negotiating. There is no nothing with GE.
Yeah,
It is
you know,
what it is.
Craig, I have to agree with you on that 100%. You're absolutely correct on that. Yeah.
And sometimes it's harder for people that's never kind of worked with GE to understand the idea behind why they are like they are, because there's no one above GE.
Yes. It's like
as an oversight of GE, right? There's nobody up there saying, well, you got a complaint last week. What are you going to do about that? And be like, I don't care. It's
true. You're absolutely right. And, it's like having this demigod status in the industry,
exactly.
Isn't it? Oh, don't worry. GE will handle it. Okay, don't worry. GE will do it. So it's you're absolutely right. Yeah.
I mean, the main thing that we continuously focus on, other than the obvious things with process, but I mean, when you start talking about this particular project here, it's the Cap de Biches plant, which is the biggest power plant in the country, and it's expected to generate nearly 25% of the power that's consumed, providing the equivalent electricity needed to power up to 500,000 Senegalese homes. So some people in this world, Arvy, they don't know what it's like to be without power. So this plant powering 500,000 homes, that's a massive, massive undertaking, and one that's needed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right. You put that, statement very well. A lot of people don't actually know what it's like because you take for granted wherever they are. You've got access to electricity, light, running water, etc., etc. But I guess you sometimes forget that. I mean, because we travel a lot and we're based in country, we kind of, I think, even for myself, I find myself kind of coming back to base when I'm overseas. Like, this is not what matters. That doesn't matter,
Well, even from your perspective, you can probably get in a vehicle right now and drive 15 to 20 minutes in any direction where you're at right now and find people that don't have power. So,
yeah, you're right. And it's something that, I spent a lot of time, I spent a lot of time with a lot of the educators and people that influence policy here, and you have a very wide range of opinions, which I'm always interested in talking to people about, because you look at the wealth of the country. I'm just talking about Nigeria now, not Senegal, and you just kind of think, wow, it's you're worlds apart, but you're also on the verge of something huge as well with the development, which is exactly what's going to happen to Senegal as well. It will just take this setup, and then from there on, it'll be smooth sailing, I think, for the rest of the contracts that will come about in Senegal.
Well, again, like all of the other Western worlds are talking about getting rid of oil and gas, here is a country that is just getting started powering homes with what we've had for generations.
Yeah.
So if you're listening and you have power, like I said before, and some of the different things there with the show, count your blessings. I think having running water and having power in a lot of parts of this world is not a necessity for people, and people take it for granted. So.
Yeah. Agreed.
Arvy, I think we've come to the end of this week's show. Let me see if we have any questions or comments.
No questions?
It doesn't look like we have any questions. Man, that's Croatia, UAE, Indonesia, India. That's a lot that's Congo, Brazil. That's great. There's a lot of people showed up today. Aberdeen. Well, Arvy, that's looks like we cleared this one out. So have a great weekend, and we'll speak to you next week.
Absolutely. You'll speak to me next week. See you, Greg. Take good care.
Bye. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
You've been watching West Africa Weekly, a live series brought to you by Riglinks and Arvy Nahar. Your hosts have been Greg and Arvy. For sponsorship opportunities, send us an email at info@riglinks.com. Tune in next Thursday at 8 a.m. CST for another live episode.